Hey guys, so in this video we're going to have a look at adding matrices. So in a previous video I introduced you guys to the concept of the order of a matrix. So this concept of order was that you have a matrix here and it has these rows which go from left to right, so from left to right. Then you have these columns which go from top to bottom, rows left to right, columns top to bottom. And when we're defining a matrix, we say it has this order, which is in this rows by column terminology. So what we do to work out the order is we count the number of rows and then we count the number of columns. So for this matrix here, we say that it has 2 rows and it's multiplied by 2 columns. So this matrix here on the left is a 2 by 2 matrix. So when we're looking at adding matrices, this becomes extremely important because you can only add matrices of the same order. So you can only add matrices of the same order. And I cannot stress this enough. So we can only add matrices of the same order. So if they do not match, if you have a 2 by 2 and you don't have a 2 by 2 here, then you cannot add the matrices. And I guess I've stressed that enough, but I really can't. You can only add them when they're the same order. So what we want to look at here is, in order to be able to add these two matrices, we need to know if this one is also of order 2 by 2. So it's fairly obvious to actually look at it and say there is a 2 by 2, but we're going to actually have a look and just check. So it says it needs to have the same number of rows and columns as our first matrix. So we look at the number of rows. You got 1, 2, so it's got 2 rows. We write that down, and it's also got 2 columns. It's got 2 columns. So this matrix here is of the same order. It's quite obvious in this example, but you need to have them of the same order in order to be able to add them. And if they are of the same order and you do add them together, it's going to produce a matrix of the exact same order as these first 2 matrices. So if this is 2 by 2, this is 2 by 2, the resulting matrix, once you add them together, is also going to be 2 by 2. Can't stress that enough. So the way you actually go about adding matrices is we are going to look at our elements individually. So in our first matrix we have this first row and first column, and this is our first element. So it's our first row, first column element. And we take that from our first matrix and we go to our second matrix and we take the element in the first row in the first column, so the exactly corresponding element, so this top left, and we add them together. So we then put that into our resulting matrix and we say, well, our first row first element is 4 plus our second first row first element, which is 1, and we add them together, and that sits in our first row first column, and that's going to be our first element, just 4 plus 1. And then we go to our first row second element, which we've got 3, and we do the exact same thing. So we say our first row second column is going to be 3. We go over to our first row second column of our next matrix, that's going to be 2. So that's going to be 2. We then go over to our first row second column of our resulting matrix and we say that the first row second column is going to be 3 plus 2. We put 3 plus 2 there. And then we filled up our first row, so we need to move on to the next row. So we go to our second row first column. So in our second row first column, we've got the number 2. We're going to add that to the second row first column of our next matrix. So second row first column, we've got the number 3. So in our resulting matrix, we're going to have 2 plus 3. So it's going to be 2 plus 3. 2 plus 3. And then our final element in this bottom right hand corner is going to be our second row, our second column. It's going to be the number 1. So we take the number 1 and we add it to our second row, second column of our second matrix. So 1 plus 4, and then we're going to put it into our second row, second column of our matrix. So we say 1 plus 4, and that's going to be our last element here. So then we've completed this matrix. All that's left to do is complete the little additions inside the matrix. So if we look here, we're just going to have our 4 plus 1, 4 plus 1. Our top element is going to be 5. For our next element, we've got 3 plus 2, so we said 3 plus 2 gives us this 3 plus 2 here. So our next element is going to be 5 as well. And then we look at our next element, we said it was 2 plus 3, gives us this down here, 2 plus 3. So we got 5 down here. And in our bottom right, we've got 1 plus 4, 1 plus 4. So our bottom right element is going to be 5. So as you can see, 4 plus 1 is 5, 3 plus 2 is 5, 2 plus 3 is 5, 1 plus 4 is 5. So when we're adding matrices, they need to be of the same order, and it's just a matter of taking the corresponding elements and putting them into the corresponding locations, just like that. So that's how we do our first matrix. And then we want to look at our next matrix, and we say, okay, that's our first example, this is our second example. So firstly, we need to work out the order. So if we look at this matrix here, we know our order is rows by columns. So we've got rows here, 1, 2, 3. It's got 3 rows, and it's got this 1 column here. So it's a 3 by 1 matrix. Then we want to look at the matrix that we're adding to it, and we say, okay, it's got 1 row, so it's an order of 1 row multiplied by 1, 2, 3 columns. It's a 1 by 3. But what do we notice here? Our two matrices are not of the same order. So not the same order. So the first thing I said was that we can only add matrices of the same order. So if we try to start adding these, is our resulting matrix going to be a 3 by 1, or is it going to be a 1 by 3? Which one are we going to get? So we don't know, because the matrices are not of the same order, we cannot add. So we cannot add them together. And I can't stress that enough. Unless they're of the same order, we can't add them together. So what we're going to do, this is the second example, because our matrices are not of the same order, we're just going to get rid of them and say that we cannot add them together because they're not of the same order. So what you guys need to remember is that when you are adding your matrices, you take the element and you match it up with its corresponding element in the other matrix, and then you add them together. So it would be 4 plus 1 goes into our top left hand corner. Both of these numbers are in the top left hand corner. Our bottom left hand corner, so you take 2, you add it to 3, then you're going to put it into the bottom left hand corner. So it's a fairly straightforward process. It takes a little practice to get used to. I'm going to put up some examples for you guys to have a go at, but it's not too difficult stuff, and if you keep at it, you can actually get it. So I'll put out these examples. Thanks for watching.